Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar today, The Integrated Connection. It's so good that you can take the time to join us. So today's webinar is focusing specifically on the integrated connection, what seems to be, future tech 10 or 20 years ago, today is a reality. We've got our RTLS connected systems where we're connecting workers and equipment on site. We've got mobile applications, autonomous heavy equipment and drones and robots and augmented and virtual reality. There's so many technologies available today. Even the development of 3D printing on buildings, which we haven't seen a great deal of in recent days. But these are just some of the technologies that have been deployed in the last few years and used on job sites throughout the world. Well, technologies are designed to help us manage every aspect of the construction process, from construction planning to scheduling, project management, and field reporting and back office management. Well, many construction companies now have graduated from paper to digital documentation. And in the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen so many new technologies emerge. But with so many of these new technologies hitting the streets today, will this multiple technology platform create time-consuming disconnect with the information that we're hoping to revolutionize the construction process? Will IT teams, struggle to find ways to prioritize potentially game-changing intelligence? Or is it realistic to expect that a single source integrated solution will be available in the future? Or will it just be that construction companies will have to invest in multiple solutions? Well, I don't know the answer to these questions, but we have a great panel today who have joined us from all over the world, industry-leading professionals in this area of construction technology. You should be able to shed some light to the future for construction technology. Well, I'd like to welcome and introduce you to our panel today. Joining us from Saudi Arabia, we have Badr Bouchard, president of the Project Management Institute in Saudi Arabia. Badr, thanks for joining us. Anas Badwa, the director of the Center of Excellence in Smart Construction. We also have Dr. Hassan Balawi, the Chief Executive Officer at Wakecap Technologies. Hassan, thanks for joining. Angelus Nicola, the Director of Sector Build. We have John Chesser, the COO and CRO of Jovex. We have Sharif Elbad, the Director of Business Development and Industry Strategy with Oracle. And Daniel Pifko, the Vice President of North America for Wakecap Technologies. Well, it's great that you could all join us today. And I wanted to go to Anas. Anas, why don't you take a couple of minutes to introduce us to the CESC? Maybe you could share with us some of the vision that you have for this organization.
And welcome everyone, and thank you for, it's a pleasure to be co-hosting this webinar with yourselves. So the Center for Excellence in Smart Construction is developed in what we call the triple helix approach. Basically what that is government, industry and academia working together on a number of challenges. And particularly for the Center of Excellence, we're working on challenges for construction. And what the center does is look into challenges within the construction industry and everything around the construction industry, from design, construction to operation and maintenance of facilities. So we have 3 themes within the center. And these themes are the kind of topics that we tackle according to some of the government strategies, but also some of the industry partners that we work with, but also some of the issues that has been tackled and challenged within the academia. So these 3 themes are productivity performance. So within this theme, we look at how can we look into better ways to enhance the productivity performance of the construction industry and the built environment in general, including the assets. The second theme is sustainability. As you know, the sustainability is one of the biggest issues at the moment around the world, and construction is definitely one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions and etc. around the world. So there is a lot of challenges that we work with the UAE Minister of Climate Change and Environment, who's the chairman of the board of the centre, to really address these issues and see ways of identifying them, but more importantly, to address them, whether through government policies or even industry collaboration and working together with academia to come up with solution for that. And the last but not least, in terms of themes, is well-being. I'm sure Wakecap is quite keen on that topic in particular, and others. But well-being is one of the biggest issues, again, that we have within the construction industry, especially in the region. And there's a lot of data that's been collected in regards to what it is that we need to do in terms of well-being. And I'm not just talking about well-being in the construction sites, but also the well-being of how can we design buildings in a better way to create a smarter environment or a better environment for people to live and work in. So that's the three themes that we work on. I can talk for weeks and weeks about this, or even months, but this just give you a bit of an introduction about what we do within the centre.
Well, thanks, Hadas. Really appreciate that, and thanks for joining us. It's great it is great to partner with you, and we look forward to seeing some really interesting things develop. And you've been doing that, really supporting the construction technology developments in the UAE and throughout the entire region. Well, most of the people that are representing our panel today have association to products that provide service to this area of technology in construction. Except, however, we have Mr. Badr Bouchard, who is in Saudi Arabia and is very much involved with the project management of sites. And so he is probably the only user of technology, or representing the using of the technology. And so we're so glad to have you on our panel today. I just wanted to ask a question to you. With the industry, moving forward with the adoption of these new technologies, both in construction and in the oil and gas sector, where I know you have some involvement, while everyone else is representing the product here, I'd be very interested to understand from the user's perspective the need for them and the purpose of these technologies that you've seen and experienced to date. You are recognized as a project management leader. You have some very good cred in the industry. And so I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on where you're seeing the technologies, where you're seeing the value being brought to the construction management process.
Well, I would like to thank you, Philip and Wakecap team, for organizing such a gathering. I'm looking forward to hear the team's panelists' thoughts and share my insight. Today's agenda contains really interesting topics and very important. I'm very delighted to be hosted in this venue. First of all, I believe that we are living in a new era in project management. In this era, we shouldn't discussing or considering technologies whether it's something extra or something that's good to have. As a matter of fact, it is something essential, and every project should be equipped with the sufficient technologies that will ultimately be the enabler for the project teams to execute their project for their own success. If you think of any type of project, whether small or medium or mega, we are really thinking of a process which will start from the initiation till reaching out to the closeout. Each phase of this challenging deliverable is a massive task covering all aspects of the project, but it's currently really lacking the use of technology implementations process and plans for initiation from the plan for initiation for the project. For example, you cannot just implement technologies haphazardly. I think we should have an integration technology to the process of a project development in the project. As a matter of fact, the technology should be a project requirement during the project journey, and the project team should strive to capture and implement the emerging technologies available in the market and maximizing the utilizations.
Are you seeing this today with the technologies that are being presented to you? Are you seeing this?
And the technologies that I'm seeing today, we have a lot of, especially with some of the panelists that we have here today, we have a lot of partners and technologies that being really partners with in the constructions, and really supported us in terms of safety, in terms of project monitoring, and in terms of monitoring our productivity and enhancing our productivities, and linking all the processes together with using the technologies that we have in hand. There is startup technologies and there is mature technologies, but that should not scare us from going and piloting these technologies and see what we have, and see and partners with the technology providers to give maturity to such technologies to the world.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm sure we'll come back to some of those points during the next hour, and we only want to keep you here for an hour. But if you have any questions for any of the panel, then use the Q&A there to send us a question. We'll see what we can do to get to answering those at the end of our webinar. But Hassan Al-Balawi, CEO of Wakecap, lots of really great developments there in Wakecap in the last 12 months. Why don't you give us a bit of an update as to what's happening with your technology, and a little bit of focus on, this area of integration. Where do you see it moving ahead for Wakecap?
Thanks so much, Phil. And thanks for everyone who actually made it to this webinar, especially our panelists. Really appreciate it. So it's basically, so a little bit about Wakecap. Wakecap is an IoT-based company that provides enterprise solution to improve the safety and construction, the safety and productivity at the construction site. And what I'm always fascinated by is, like, when I first learned about construction, is everybody was pointing to that labor productivity index, and it didn't really make sense to me at the beginning. But then, like, eventually, it sounds like, okay, that is the metric that if you improve safety, if you take any, if you reduce waste, if you actually do any action that helps, that is the metric. So what we at Wakecap, we have been dedicated to really look into improving that metric. And a lot of people, let's say, a lot of mindset thought that safety and productivity doesn't go at least from the face value together. At Wakecap, we have actually shown that there is a direct value when you integrate solutions at the hardware level to improve safety and the productivity at the same time. Now, what we got to know is, the more we know about the construction industry, the more, I would say, I get more curious about this as I get to know more about the construction. So one of the funny things is that when we started looking at integrating our data with the project data, we got like 10x of the value. Now, it's all about identifying where to change, or what we have been like now focusing on is like identifying which waste that can be detected in order for it to be improved. And this is where I see the integration is the heart of it. You got the material tracking, the project progress, the document control, all of them talking together. Technology exists. Now we actually ready to integrate and actually just get the benefit multiplied, not actually added, when combining those together. And I look forward to see everyone's point of view of this. I'm so excited to actually solve this problem, or trying to solve it, but it's just getting more interesting every time we get into in every project we learn new things. So.
Very good. Thank you, Hassan. I'd like to hand over to Angelus, who is the director for Sector, a company that specializes not in any technology that they've developed, but the implementation of multiple technologies providing services to the construction sector. Very interesting company, and I really like some of their marketing. I like the look of their logo and all the pretty things. But what about the product? What about the technology? Angelus, why don't you give us a bit of an overview as to Sector? Who are you? What is the market that you're servicing? And why is it that you've gone ahead to consider implementing others' technologies instead of developing your own?
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil, so much for the warm introduction. I'm really honored to be among such guests today, and truly proud to be calling you all my colleagues. Construction has gone a long way when it comes to technology adaptation. So Sector was founded around the idea that our super busy construction industry was all of a sudden, in a matter of a few years, overwhelmed with hundreds of platforms and solutions. Last time we counted, I think there were 500 construction technology startups. We are an integrator of the best construction technologies in the world. We review these solutions, we test them, we implement them ourselves. So to answer your question, we absolutely agree with your statement when it comes to integrations of these solutions, that that's the way of the future, and we agree with it, and that's the basis of what we used to be founded as well. Now, that being said, when we started, we noticed that there was a massive fragmentation, right? Some companies were well ahead of their game with not only testing, but also streamlining solutions, and others, and most often of the same scale, which is really mind-blowing, have never even heard of the most basic field collaboration platforms, such as FieldWire and Procore. And we see that as the very basis, right? So it's very clear to us that technology adaptation in construction, it's still very much in its infancy, although progressing really fast. So to answer your question about what our customers get excited about, well, number one, they get excited because we are not consultants. So they love the fact that not only do they have a single source of accessing multiple solutions, but we go in the field with them, we get our hands dirty, and we implement these solutions with them. So they also really like saving money with us, but that's a different story. But today, Phil, it's a very different picture from when we first got started about 3 years ago. Discussions around integrations come up in almost every conversation that we have, and we really see that as the way of the future. And I'm looking forward to this discussion today.
Where is your company based, Angelus, and what is the market area that you're representing to?
Right, we are based in Cyprus, and it's an island off the coast of Greece. We're right in the middle of Europe and the Middle East, for those who don't know. 3 hours from London, 3 hours from Dubai. And our customers are all the way from the UK down to Dubai.
Fantastic, very good. Very difficult time the last couple of years for you to be in startup mode for your company, but how are you finding COVID-19 situation there in that European marketplace where you're based?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a blessing or a curse. It's not something pleasant. COVID-19 is not something pleasant. However, it has brought to light some realities that needed to be faced a long time ago. The fact that we should have access to what's happening on our sites with solutions such as Wakecap, where our workers, limiting the number of workers on site. The fact that we need to have a look into what's happening on our site with live feed cameras and 360 reality capture tools. And the fact that we need to get off paper because we can no longer afford to physically print and carry paper around. So it has been, I think COVID has been tough on everyone, and it still is. However, I'm an optimist. So I'll just say that looking forward to see if this change that happened in construction now lasts, and I'm very hopeful that it will last.
Fantastic. You said earlier that you represent the world's best construction technologies. Is Wakecap on that list?
100% Wakecap is on this list.
Just
How
double
can you not?
Just double checking.
That's an unpaid ad.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Over in the USA, John Chesser got out of bed very early this morning to join us. John, thanks so much for taking the time to be here. Jovex is another interesting company that in a different way, has their own technologies, but also works closely with partners to integrate other technologies. And so I just wanted to go to you, John, just to see if you had any comments on this area of integration. I understand that you're working on some specific projects with Wakecap, and I hope that goes ahead well. But how do you see the activity for the integration of technologies, and what's the latest happenings over for Jovex?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. I think the key is information, right? So collecting the data in unique ways is great, but tying that information together and making that available to construction teams has been what we've seen as the real value. We like to say bad news early is good news. And what we focus on is materials. And construction is chaotic. And, if you can't ensure the flow of materials to that worker, then you're going to have disruption. You're not going to have good productivity. Bad things happen. So, if you can take that, you can combine that together with other information about the schedule and the plan and, the people, and bring all that together and make that available to the project management teams that are out there. That's really where we see the value. We've been doing this for 13 years. During that time, mobile phones, apps have become more prevalent. The technology on data collection has become better. But really, like Angelus was saying, there's 500 startups out there. It's the Wild West, and for the contractors and the owners and people that are having to try to weed through all that, they need to work with people that are able to work with other applications together, right? So I know Wakecap has got a great, robust API. We've got a robust API, and that's the key. Focus on what you do well, do it really, really well, go deep, but then be able to exchange that data so your customers have that information.
Very good. Thank you so much. Well, we look forward to hearing more from you throughout our webinar. We already have some very interesting questions proposed to us to answer. And if you're joining us today and you have a question, then please use the Q&A to reach out to us. Well, one of those questions, before we get to those questions, I do want to introduce to you Sharif El Abad. He is the Director of Global Industry and Innovation Strategy. Now, that's a very long title, but it's not as long as his previous title. And so it seems that the longer your title in this area of technology, the more influential you are. But Sharif, we know that as the Director of Global Industry and Innovation Strategy, you're very much in tune with some of the technology integration activity that's going on worldwide today. I did a search on Google the other day and I just typed in integration plus Oracle, and the next 20 pages were all Oracle articles about integration. And so I was wondering if you could just share with us your opinions for the future development of construction technology, and where you see the future heading with regard to the integration of different technologies and solutions, specifically for the construction industry.
So what we have within our team in the Global Industry Strategy and Innovation is we're obviously a team of 6 people around the world. What we do for a living is leading and driving these true digital transformations and innovation opportunities with the most strategic clients around the world. And I am part of this particular team. We're also working on something called Oracle Industries Innovation Lab. That's obviously the largest physical establishment, but it's only dedicated for nothing but innovation. Innovation around Oracle technologies, but also other technologies for partners that they are part of this panel, and I would name them Jovex and Wakecap as well. They've been working with us over the past few years on integration use cases related to the technology. Our role with the integration, just straight to the point, what Oracle is doing, and particularly the CEGPU that I work for, which is the Construction and Engineering Global Business Unit. And for some of you who are not aware of what CEGPU is, it's again another acronym or abbreviation from Oracle that it's centered around the engineering and construction industry. Obviously, Oracle acquired Primavera about 13 years ago, and then Primavera made some acquisitions to competitive solutions and complements to our platform that we considered very strategic, such as Aconex, such as Unifier, such as Textura, et cetera, and we're continuing with these integrations even beyond what we've done over the past. We bring in all these platforms for the project controls, portfolio analysis, planning, scheduling throughout the life cycle of the project. And then we bring in the best-in-class technologies where we build market use cases against things that they are demanded by the clients, both from project ownership perspective, but also from project delivery perspective. So imagine if I just put this in the context, imagine if you have a project schedule in Primavera P6, which is the flagship product for planning and scheduling, and you want to add life and reality into material resources, into construction labor and workers as well. So if you want to know how driving or how compelling the readiness of the material into the project scheduling, all the way from factory acceptance test until it hits the road, gets into the gate, gets on the lane yards, and the material is ready to be installed. And you need this to be automatically updated in your project schedule because the material is such a very driving resource to your activities. This is what Jovix is doing with Primavera P6, such a great technology. And if you want to understand what's the impact of construction productivity from labor in a large EPC project in a joint venture with another large construction contractor, this is what Wakecap or the role of Wakecap comes into play. We've been seeing a lot of lean construction management solution. We were chatting about it just prior to the webinar itself. There are really very fascinating applications from Primavera, from other competitors and other products in the market around the use of the planning and scheduling tool for the construction supervision and even down to the labor. But we couldn't really see a great success from the use of this across all the projects because at the end of the day, it requires manual interpretation and human interaction as well, which makes it really difficult in the construction environment. What Wakecap and others in the market have accomplished is bringing the automation and nearly zero manual interaction into the game, understanding the reality versus the actual versus the planned hours, which tells you the productivity, which gives you more insights on the actual cost versus the budget of your projects. So that's the role that we're doing, is we're bringing life into the project planning and project controls platform with what we're doing on the ecosystem level. Also, Angelus, he mentioned reality capture. I haven't seen a level of deployment and interaction on this particular technology, which is reality capture or anything around virtual design centers, as such I've seen as an impact from the COVID-19. It's such a very awakening sign for a lot of contractors, I would say, especially, and also project owners, to the use of the cameras, that it's now going beyond just taking time lapses, videos from the project sites, but now people look at these cameras to analyze maybe safety violations, incidents, taking actual reality, comparing the original model with the reality in order to spot any gaps or deficiencies related to the quality, et cetera, and thanks to all these technologies. What I've mentioned here is not only something that it's Oracle related, but it's also partner related, and that's our role to the industry, where we bring in Oracle as well as others in order to achieve the ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Sharif. We'll there's a little bit to unpack there, but I'm pretty sure we'll get to some of that when we start discussing some of the questions that we have here. But I know that Daniel Pifko from Wakecap, the vice president for North America, the last couple of weeks, has been on the road traveling America, attending some construction industry shows and the like. Daniel, there's a question that has been asked, is that the adoption of construction technology, is this the same all around the world? Are we seeing certain countries that are moving more quickly ahead? I know that you're a man that keeps very much abreast to this, and being there in the US, what are you seeing there in the marketplace, and what have you seen at some of these exhibitions that you've been attending recently?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing so there are some obvious regional differences, whether it's the availability of labor, the percent of that's on a project that's spent on labor versus equipment versus materials, the rules governing interactions with labor, whether it's privacy rules or how the different players are organized in any individual region, whether it's inside the United States, whether it's it's a geographically diverse area, or worldwide too. So you get variations worldwide on that. But ultimately, as a whole industry, there are more similarities than not. And there are certainly similarities that allow us to trade ideas back and forth around the world. I mean, geez, look at the people who are just on this call alone, or on this webinar alone. There are people from literally all over the world that are basically facing the same problems of what do I do to reduce my schedule risk? What do I do to reduce injuries? What do I do to reduce costs? What do I do? All of these different things that we're all facing, and we're trying to pull the best in class. Whether it's working with pretty much anybody on this call, but working with Sector, working with Oracle, working with Jovic, working with all of these companies to solve these same problems, pick the best ideas from around the world, and then replicate those ideas and trade those ideas back and forth. How we adopt the new technologies is also very everybody's trying to pick out the best ideas, whether it's general contractors. In the US, you're seeing a lot of GCs working together to kind of say, hey, let's all investigate new technologies together. What Oracle is doing is very interesting with the innovation labs, because honestly, a lot of the construction companies, don't have the background or the time or the resources or an active project where they've got the space, the margin to work with these things. And so the innovation lab is kind of like a playground where you can try out new technologies, demonstrate the value, demonstrate that it brings a real impact to the projects, whether it's again, reduce schedule risk or otherwise. But ultimately, we're all on this same pathway of new technologies, of working from just simple monitoring to control, and being able to actually control the individual jobs or tasks, then to optimize those tasks and to optimize how it goes, and then full-on autonomy, where certain tasks are just handled by the new technology. So monitor, control, optimize, and then provide autonomy is a path certainly that Wakecap is on, but I think we're all facing worldwide.
Okay, Badr, I see that you raised your hand there. Did you have something to comment? Just jump in. No need to raise your hand in my webinars. Just jump in and have a say.
I'm trying to be polite. Well, I think everyone is eager to deploy advanced technologies, especially in the massive development around the GCC and the Middle East region. However, the concern, Philip, is the quality of the solutions and provided, and how quickly these technologies could be implemented. Now, when we come to the integrations, it's very important, since we have the panelists here, some of them are technology suppliers, is to create a partnership that bridge the gaps in the integrations between those technology providers. It's really important to avail technology bundles to serve a project need per phase of the project. So whenever clients like us that wanted technology for a specific phase, that we have a bundle of technologies integrated to that. And it's very important to prioritize the needs and bring the focus in technologies that with the high return and merits in constructions. The aim here is to have a digital solutions and technologies speaking to each other and proposing solutions and solving problems, managing project site with a minimum human intervention.
I've seen in Saudi Arabia, there is incredible interest in technology and the adoption of technologies in construction. Some of the contractors are supporting this, but I'm also aware that many of the authorities or the clients that are designing and building these cities, I mean, they're not just buildings in Saudi Arabia, entire cities, are really seeking to adopt technology. Do you have any comment on that?
Definitely. I see that in my position serving project management in Saudi Arabia, I see the private sectors and the government sectors really competing with each other and adoption of technology. If you see the Red Sea project or the NEOM cities or other oil, gas industries, they are really competing to adopt technologies, not only adapt, but invest on startups, helping the startup to stand up on their feet and support each other in the business they have.
Okay. Anas, you're sitting there nice and quiet. So I know you're based in the UAE. I think you're traveling at this point in time. But are you seeing, discussions within your associate connections with regard to, the increased adoption of technologies and this area of integration of technologies? Are you seeing anything there?
Absolutely. I mean, I started quite early in the journey when it comes to digital transformation and smart construction within the built environment. And back in them days, we had issues of people not getting the point and not really understanding why they have to go digital. I've worked with people that prefer to use fax machines rather than emails, and we moved very, very fast from that. And now we live in an era where people would like to implement digital transformation, not because they have to, or not just because they want to, or they have to. It's because the way things are now. Mainly it's because of COVID issues that force people to come out of their comfort zone and really try and find ways to do that. But also, even before COVID, things were quite slower, but surely heading towards people moving towards digital innovations in general. And the main reason behind that, and as just to echo what John was saying earlier, is this to do with data. A lot of people are really getting to understand the fact that it's all about data. I want to become digital. Yes, there's a number of tools that I need to implement or need to have within my organization or project or program. And to do that, this is to capture certain data in a certain way, but it's all about integration as well. And this is why this topic of this webinar is really interesting, because you might have data that's coming from, as mentioned by colleagues here, from your CCTV camera. You've got other data coming in from your data document management system. You've got data coming in from sensors and etc. that you might have. But this data is not structured in a way and formed in a way that it would talk to each other through API integration and whatnot. You cannot achieve the ultimate solution. We will still be in the backlog. And this is what we had before COVID. And now after COVID, people, we see more people. I mean, during my time with PwC, we were talking to CEOs and chairmen of organizations, and they all say, I just want this dashboard that gives me all the information that I need. And yes, it sounds easy to do. Yes, you see it in movies and etc. that you can have the ultimate dashboard that tells you your tens or hundreds of projects and where they're up to and etc. And maybe a bit of analysis behind that. But it's not easy to achieve that without having the right data in place that's being captured, and having the right integration in place to make sure that you can really visualize that data, and not only visualize it for the fact of just seeing it, but also to move forward with your business, to really know how to analyze it. And then from there, you can think, okay, I need to move this way or that way. And businesses have to be a lot more agile these days, and therefore they need to be a lot more digital, and they need to be a lot more data driven.
Interesting you raise this point about the integrity of the data, collecting the data point. I know this is an area that Wakecap has spent years, the first 2 years of their startup. How do they create the system that will collect the data of digitizing a site? Hassan, do you have some comments to add in here?
Yeah, I think it was, this is a really good area, because this is one of the things that I didn't really see it come in as a value until it actually happens. So let me give you an example. We started basically, collecting hours and going after like automating like manual attendance, automating some sort of the analysis that you guess related to time. But then things started getting more interesting. So the first thing was, as Sharif mentioned, we started basically comparing what's being planned with the actually meaning here manually reported into the schedule with the real. So we brought that dimension of actual versus real that highlighted the discrepancies between what's being manually reported with what actually happening on the site. And this level of this kind of data, this is what actually goes to the planning. So no wonder when you see a plan actually doesn't come into the reality, because garbage in, garbage out. That is like what's happening to a certain level. And then we even see that at the level of so the minute you fix that issue, people like tend to, or companies in general tend to go even to the next problem. So we have a real example of, we fixed the hours. I mean, the hours in a way is like they started matching. So the actual reported to the schedule matched the real, and this has been like our case. No matter where we go to any site, we started with that, and it takes us like less than 2 weeks to do that, to start people realizing where is the discrepancies and starting highlighting them. Then they start go to the next level. Did we really assign these resources to those activities? And if they were assigned, did they really actually spend their time on the expected zones? And this is what started highlighting those information. And when it comes to integrity, it's really for them, these kind of thing, it seems to be impossible to be done until they see it. And that is, I think, what we have accomplished, is that making the impossible of handling this much of data by only just focusing on the discrepancies, only focus on what I really like about Lean is like focus on the waste. Just tell me what I'm supposed, tell me what the problem is. Most likely they would know where, what to do. It's just, as John mentioned earlier, bad news could be, always good news comes early. And this is exactly, I think technologies should start as looking for, for those bad news very early on the time. So
very interesting.
So if I can make a point here as well, based on what Hassan said and what you and Badr said earlier, with the owners now starting to get more involved. This is a trend we see not just in Saudi Arabia, although it's really prevalent there, but we start to see owners getting much more sophisticated all the way from the UK down to the Middle East. They are starting to integrate teams of consultants internally. They are setting up project management and estimating and project monitoring teams internally. And this really brings the level of the game up for really anyone who's working in construction. And speaking on Hassan's point about how important it is to have this data being accurate. Well, if a contractor cares if that data is accurate, the owner cares 10 times more about how accurate that data is.
What sort of data are these clients looking to understand? What reports are they looking for? What are the advantages that they're hoping to gain from these technologies today?
I feel it's what Sharif started saying. It's all about progress, right? If you don't know the progress of your project, where are you going? It's like you're flying a plane and you have no idea how high you're flying or how fast you're flying. So that's the beginning and the end of everything. You have to know the progress of your project. You have to know where your project is actually standing right now, and that's the most important thing. And I'll leave it at that because it's so important.
Yeah,
I think the information that's needed, or the database is needed, is not to know only what your current progress is, but to predict the future. Not in terms of project progress, but also safety, for example. If we have a database and we understand the database, and that database is integrated with our integrated solutions, then I could see where is the trend in the progress, where is the trend in the safety, where is the trend in everything in all the performances that I do of the project. Then I can predict what would be the future of that project. How healthy is the project of not? Sorry to cut you, John.
Yeah,
John,
no,
you
absolutely.
had a point?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, that's
Yeah.
being able to predict the future is what's key, right? You can do this with this data now. So, with us, it's materials, but Hassan, it's people, from an owner or a contractor that has subcontractors, that oversight that you get from that information to triangulate that data, to be able to say, okay, here's my schedule, here's my work package, this is what we should be working on. Here's the materials down to the bill of materials, and where is that, right, in the supply chain? Where is that in installation? And then, oh, by the way, if I've got workers that are supposed to be working on this work package, and I know that the material should be there for that work package, those should match. If they don't match, that's a leading indicator there's a problem, right? And so now you can take action, and now you can have an informed conversation with your subcontractors and suppliers and all the different project players that are there. And that's what leads to ultimately predictability, and that predictability leads to productivity.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you guys more. And I was going to say, okay, now they're talking about our next product. So the thing with the predictability, it's always with the right data. And this is what we kind of found. I mean, what's great about having the data, it's like if something happened, like related to safety, I mean, we do have the direct safety use cases. But what we're after is exactly what Badr and John mentions, like it's after, getting those bad news really early, or at least in a way that we can actually take an action with it. And with having the data, the beauty of that is if something happened, God forbid, that lesson learned doesn't go to waste. This is like a point that you can actually go and investigate, go back and do all your back testing. How can we actually avoid this? Risk mitigation now is not about just, a small kind of gathering with a committee that actually, it's all about how can we actually avoid this, or why? The question goes from how can we avoid this to how can we predict this? That's how it's going to go in the future.
Well, it seems
Philip, if I may add to that, apologies, Philip. Well, Badr, thanks so much again. Another unpaid ad, because what you were just mentioning about the predictive side of the house from reporting is exactly what we have done within Oracle with our construction intelligence cloud. What does that actually do is projects from the era of just the project schedule. And I'm not saying this is what Oracle only used to do in the past. When you look at all the other project management software vendors in the market, the focus has been always, when I mention about I need an analytics solution, is the first thing that it pops up in mind is the project schedule. And then project schedule is such a very collaborative thing between different stakeholders. So everyone requires different level of analytics. And then if I ask you to give me some bit of analytics related to project controls, trust me, it's all statistical. So tell me how many contracts, how many invoices, how many safety violations, etc., which is very statistical, but it's not analytical. It does not tell me with that number of violations of safety, like Hassan mentioned, or maybe that number of delayed material from a particular vendor in that number of the projects over the past 2 years, how does that create or supplier of the material?
I mean, it's very interesting though that anyone with a bright idea these days becomes a startup. There's so many new technologies that are constantly mushrooming. I mean, it would be very difficult to be in construction going through the vetting process as to what technologies I'm going to deploy on my next project. And so,
Philip, maybe if I can jump into that with an advice I got from the CEO of Jovix, Robert, when I met him in Dubai. He's like, I asked him, okay, what do you think? I mean, how can we like really do about this? And his advice was like, look, you need to be patient. I have been doing this for 9 years, and I met him like 4 years ago. And it's like, all you need to do is to make sure that you need to be patient, because it's going to take a long time in this industry. And that was the best advice I got, because it started like going back to the startup. I mean, going to an investor and telling him, look, I need this, but don't expect a result until like 5-10 years. This is the kind of industry which helped us a lot to filter out the right investor, the right advisors to really help us, because it's really about, I mean, maybe the past few years, things have been changing a lot or accelerating what we have expected 4 years ago. And I cannot really say anything to that. Maybe John lived the difference era. He can maybe shed the light on how that acceleration feels from a startup perspective. Would be eager to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the truth about this industry is that the funding is by the project. A contractor, that's how they make their money. They have a project and they make their money on the project. An owner needs to build something and they're going to be very focused on that project. And, that funding mechanism oftentimes makes it difficult for technology implementations to be done across an organization in a standardized way. But the one thing that I would say that we have started to see more and more are, people just aren't using a paper process anymore. I mean, it's just that, the workers now that are coming out, there's an age gap. The younger workers expect to have everything on a phone, on a tablet. They don't expect to go through a paper process. And so the next evolution of that is, these contractors, these owners, they need to kind of lead and say, hey, this is the information that we want. This is what we want to be able to do, and then go and look in the technology out there for, the people that can provide that and that can integrate those things together. But I think, that's the reality of this industry. It's built on projects, it's built on the backs of projects. But as more and more of these solutions come in, if people focus on the information and the kind of end result and what they need to operate these projects more effectively, either from a owner oversight perspective or either from a contract execution perspective, that's what's going to really drive this industry, is kind of leading with the end in mind.
I think, John, as you said, you
mentioned, John, there that this is, there is a new generation. You mentioned that it's construction technology adapting. The new generation is very eager to adapt. Does that mean we have to wait for a whole new generation before we see strong?
Yeah, I think tapping in what you just said, John, I think we need to enable the technology providers. First of all, is to have a partnership, as I said earlier on, between the supplier and the users. As a matter of fact, we are developing a technology conference by the year end, just to match the needs of what the owner wants versus the contractors and technology providers. That's one thing. The other thing is to support the technology providers, is that either to invest in these technology startups, or is to have this requirement of the technologies part of the performer contracts. So to have the contractors bid on it and provide a cost associated to these technologies, so to lift the burden of utilizing these technologies cost. And the owners, trust me, they are be more than willing to invest in these technologies and support the contractors to have the good relationship between the contractors and the technology providers. At the end of the day, we are trying to create an ecosystem that technology flourish in the industry, and with the end in mind that we enhance the way we do business in project management.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, the point is, though, that there's so many technologies that are hitting the streets today. Are we expecting contractors contractors to be just, running with, 10 or 15 or 20 different technologies? Or are we starting to see a consolidation to that dashboard, you mentioned earlier? Is it realistic for us to be expecting that the contractor will, just be able to deploy, a few services that are all integrated together? Daniel, what are you seeing? Are you seeing anything in this realm? You're an old technology guy.
No, there are definitely some trends from previous waves of technology that are reappearing, right? So amongst the contractors, even the ones that could fund new technologies by the project, as John was saying, or on a larger scale, none of them want to stick their neck out with the additional cost unless it's been absolutely approved. Like the technology has proved out that it brings real benefit, right? That it doesn't end up in the technology graveyard in the CTO's office, right? That it has to bring actual benefit. And then the other part of it is that from the owner side, it actually makes life easier on the contractor if the owner comes in and says, all right, we want a personnel tracking solution. We want an ERP system for materials. So that way all of the contractors have to bid with that included. And there are obvious benefits. Everyone sees the benefits once the new technologies that work are actually put into place. But by the owner putting that into the RFQs, putting it into the bid requests, then it makes it easier to start to adopt new technologies.
Okay, very good.
Bill, from our end, there is no right or wrong the way we see it. So it's whatever works for your company and it's whatever works for your team. There are some companies out there that like to have point solutions and integrate them all in the back end through their ERP system. There's other tools out there that other companies out there that like to have it all integrated for them. We do believe that you need a proper foundation in the back end to integrate these solutions, but essentially this dashboard will be built by making sure that you deploy solutions in the field that your team actually uses. So you asked earlier, is Wakecap part of our list? Absolutely it is. And the reason is that it requires zero training. So the people that give you your data don't need to be trained on it. They don't need to learn anything new. They just go on about their day by putting their hard hat on, and then the data works itself. So these are the kinds of solutions that ultimately help you build that dashboard, because it's the dream, but it's not too far away.
I read an article recently. It was written back in 2019, and it read that the top 4 technology challenges that are being faced by the construction industry, and it highlighted 4 interesting points. And I'd be very curious to hear your comments as to whether these are challenges still today, or if we've seen significant development, which I think we have since 2019. Going green while saving some green was the first title. I mean, how do we implement these technologies and still afford it? Do we have to increase the cost of our construction, or is there expectations that we'll see cost reduction? That was the first point. I'm going to read through the rest in case we run out of time. But what are you seeing in this area? I'm going to go to Bader on this one. I mean, you're working with organizations to implement technologies that are cost that's a concern, or what's your expectation?
Actually, I don't see the technology as a cost burden at all. If you compare the cost of this technology compared to the cost of the project, is nearly nothing, to be honest with you. But if you see the added value of this technology, how much added to the efficiency of the project and productivity, and when this project will be completed, you will see great. As not in terms of time, as I said, it's also in safety, environment, and other things. So the cost of the technology is not a showstopper in deploying these technologies in the projects.
That was a great answer, and Hassan's going to take you to every one of his sales calls in the future, because I mean that's
actually a very good point.
Sorry, Phil.
It's because, and there is a reason for it, because the advance in technology actually made it possible. It's the same technology that's being being offered to the consumer at a very competitive price, has with that the same cost brought to the industrial for a huge value. That made it like when we started actually working the solution, we used, let's say, the contractor as a product market fit, because we know there is a huge value to the owner, but we needed to make it valuable first to the contractor. So when we come to the client or to the owner, we say, look, it's already valuable to the contractor. So by the mere of the value of propagation, it would definitely have at least, much more value to the owner, which totally makes sense.
If I can summarize, what is as an owner, what we are looking at in terms of technology adoption, it's not really the cost is the thing that we are thinking of. Is there an outcome out of this technology? Is the technology easy to be selected? Is the technology friendly to use and maintain? Does the technology need a lot of preparation or customizations, or it's easy to adapt off the shelf? That's what makes all the owners really have an easy adaptation to the technology, not the cost.
Well, it seems that we've had some technical difficulties today. We do apologize for that. Not quite sure exactly what happened, but just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to having you back here again when we discuss more about construction technology and the integration of those technologies in a practical way to our construction process. Well, from all of us at Wakecap and the CESC, we thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the time that was given to us by the panelists. They are all very busy, but we thank you for your contribution today. And we hope that you stay safe and look forward to catching up with you in the future. My name's Phil Higgins for Wakecap Technologies. Thank you.